All right, so people want to know how I did this normal blending thing that I'm using for the creature creator, as you can see right here. I used a geometry node setup, so I'll try to show how to do that, but there's also a way to do it with modifiers that's a little easier to set up. So let's open up a new file, and we need two objects. They need to be two separate objects, so I'll add in a Suzanne mesh right here. And we can add a subdivision surface modifier. I'll just press Ctrl 2. That adds a, 2 levels right there, and we'll shade this smooth. It's going to look better when it's shaded smooth. Then we can add in our second object that's going to blend into Suzanne. So I think for this, I'll also just add maybe, 4 levels of a subdivision surface modifier, and we'll shade that smooth also. You know what? Actually, let's turn this down to maybe 3, and then we'll apply it. So this is all real geometry if we go into edit mode, and this will probably make it work a little better. I'll add like another one on top just to smooth it out a little more. Then we'll make sure to shade smooth. Okay, so basically what we're going to do is check the distance between this and the faces on the Suzanne mesh, and then we're going to turn that into a vertex group. And then we're going to use that vertex group to make it so only the parts that are close are actually going to blend. And we're also going to shrink wrap it a little so that it, right here in the silhouette, there's kind of this sharp spot. We don't really want that if we want it to look like it's blending. So we can also shrink wrap it. So to do that, let's just scale this down just a little bit, move it into place. Okay, so first we need a vertex group. So go over to the object data properties, add a vertex group right here. And I'm just going to make sure that the weight is all the way down. So it's at 0, and then we can press assign. I'm in edit mode, everything is selected. So now we have just a vertex group assigned to everything with a weight of 0. So it's not doing anything yet, but we can edit it with a modifier. It's under edit, it's called vertex weight proximity. The proximity one is important because that is checking the distance between, the current object and whatever you select. So first we want to select the vertex group that we made. It's just called group. You can name it anything as long as this matches the one in here that you used. And then target object, we're targeting Suzanne. Proximity to object, I believe, is checking the distance to the origin point, which is right here. And we don't want that. We want the distance to the geometry. So things like, the vertices, the edges, the faces. I'm going to set this to face, and we can't really see what's going on. It should be editing the vertex group right now, but, we're not using the vertex group for anything. So let's shrink wrap it now. So add a modifier, go to, I believe, deform, then shrink wrap. All right. So again, we want it to shrink wrap to Suzanne, but we do this, it's going to shrink wrap everything. We only want it to shrink wrap that vertex group that we made. So let's set this to the group, and it looks like this might be inverted. And also there's kind of an order of operations error right here. So right now what's happening is we're subdividing and then it's editing a vertex group. We want to be subdividing after, because right now you can see it's kind of doing this checkerboard thing. Only some of the points actually have that vertex group. The ones that are created with a subdivision surface modifier don't have that vertex group applied. So if we just move the vertex weight proximity to the top, it should work a little better, and it's subdivided, so it's smoothing out slightly. If you apply this and then make sure that, the vertex group is assigned, it's going to work better, but obviously you don't want you don't want to be working with crazy dense meshes. All right, so it looks like it is working, but it might be flipped. So yeah, right now it's only shrink wrapping stuff that's far away. Yeah, we can flip the group right here, and we can mess with the vertex weight proximity. Right now, it's going to be checking for things that are up to a meter away, which is pretty far. That's like one of these squares right here. So we should probably lower this. You can kind of see the edge of what it's affecting. So we want something that's like a little closer to maybe like, we can do something around here. So it's like close to 0.2. We can also change the fall off. So right now it's linear. We can change this to smooth, so it's a little smoother. Let's see. Yeah, so this this is working. It's not really very smooth. I think it looks a little better when you kind of inflate it at the edges also. So we can do that pretty easily with a displace modifier. We want to displace it before shrink wrapping, and we only want it to affect that vertex group, which we should flip like that. So now you can see it is inflating. We can just set the strength to 0, turn it up as much as we want. So this will kind of make a smoother connecting point. And again, if you want the distance to be changed, that's all controlled by the vertex weight proximity. You can just turn this up or down like that. All right, so that is looking pretty smooth already, but we want to transfer the normal data from Suzanne over to the edge right here of that, the vertex group that we made. And then the shading will actually look good. Probably not in solid mode, but once we actually look at things in render view, it should look pretty good. So let's add a new modifier. The one we're looking for is under edit, and it's data transfer. So again, the source is going to be Suzanne because we're transferring data from Suzanne to this ball right here. Then the vertex group is that one we've been using, and the normal data is under face corner. You can really just check all of these, and the only one that has normal data, which is used for like lighting and stuff to show like what direction it is light should bounce and whatever. That's only under face corner. So you can turn that on and click custom normals. And when you do that, you should immediately see a difference. But again, we need to invert this. So you can just flip it right here. And now you can see it's a little closer to matching these two spots. So the deal with why it looks this way in solid view is because of how we have it. Well, because of how I have it set up. You might not have yours set up this way, but I usually have a matte cap turned on, and there's also something down here, outline right here. So it outlines things so you can see it a little better. If you turn that off, it'll actually look pretty smooth, but we can actually look at it in, in render view. I'm just using Eevee right now. Let's add some lights. I'm just gonna, quickly change some of this so it's a little easier to look at. Now we have, okay, put this over here. We can turn the strength of the HDRI down quite a bit, and we can add, if we want, some materials, and I'll add the material to this also. So these are gonna have the same material. That's gonna work best. If you have two separate materials, you'll obviously see where they're connecting, because they'll be different colors or roughness or whatever. So let's just turn the roughness down so it's pretty shiny. So as you can see, it's like connecting pretty well, and this can also interact in real time. So it's getting kind of, let me turn this. New Eevee looks kind of noisy. You can see it kind of, morphing as it gets closer, and it actually looks pretty nice. It's not completely smooth. Like, I think if we turn this off, it'll be even smoother. Or if we applied this and made sure that, the vertex group was assigned to everything, it would be even smoother. We can actually try that really quick. Let me save this so I can send it to everybody. So let's just apply this. You can see, the vertex group is not going to be correct. So then we have to go into here. We can just assign a 0 to everything, and then it should work fine. Honestly, this looks pretty much the same, so I'm not going to worry about it too much, but just showing that, you can do it. That's how you would, apply everything. So that's pretty much it. And you can come in here, you can, model stuff on the fly if you want. Let's just select a whole bunch of these and inset it and make something ridiculous, and make sure also that the vertex group is assigned to everything. You can kind of do whatever you want with this shape, and it should look fine. But it is kind of a lot of modifiers. Like, you have to, you have to input the vertex group, target Suzanne like 4 times, which is not very user friendly if, because I made it for the creature creator. So I want it to be like you select one thing once and then it works. So we'll try to do that with geometry nodes. So I'm actually just going to hide this. I'll name it modifier, so that it was made with modifiers. Now let's do the same thing. We'll add a cube. I'll give this that material too, and we'll subdivide it twice or 3 times, and then apply it. And I'll add another subdivision on top, shade it smooth. And this one is going to be with geometry nodes. So it's the same idea. We're doing pretty much the same thing, okay? So into geometry nodes, we need to check the proximity to Suzanne. So we can do that pretty easily. We just want to bring in, well, to get Suzanne in here, you can just drag and drop like this. And then we have Suzanne as an object, and we can get the geometry. So we want to find the proximity. It's already at the very top right here, but you can search for proximity, geometry proximity, and that will give us the distance right there. So we're already pretty close. We can actually view this with Control Shift, look at this geometry, and then we want to view the distance. This looks very weird. Oh, wait, you know what? This is strange. We're checking the distance. We want to check relative. Yeah, so set this to relative instead of original. And now you can see we already have a gradient, so we're already part of the way there. This should probably be flipped. So just like we were inverting everything before, we want the highest values to be right where it's touching. So we can just flip it right here. You can use a few things. You can use a map range, or you can just subtract it and make sure it's clamped, or use a mix node. I usually use a map range. Just drop it in here. And I like to flip the 2 min and the 2 max. So instead of 0 and 1, we'll just do 1 and 0. And now it's inverted. And you can also change, change the range right here. So this is how you would affect which parts, or change which parts are affected. So we can actually lower this right in here. So now we have our mask that we're going to use. And we also need to get the normal data, and we need to shrink wrap and displace. So we're doing all the same things. Literally the same concepts. Okay, so let's displace it first. So for that, you can use a set position right here. And this is going to be our mask, distance mask. I'll just name that distance mask. And so we can plug that in here, and it should only be affecting that right there. A way to displace everything in the normal direction is pretty easy. You just get the normal right here. You plug it in to the offset. You can see that it will start to inflate. And then if you want, you can either like multiply or scale it. I usually use scale. It's the same as multiplying, except it's, instead of having like 3 options for the vector, you just have 1. It's applied to all of them. So this is how you control how much is being displaced. We can plug this in right here. And then, so it's only affecting that one part. And then we can plug this one in right here, and that is going to control, how much it's being displaced. This is set to linear, so we can change this to smoother step like that, and it's a little smoother. If we want to get more specific than that, we can set it back to linear, and we can bring in a float curve right here. I'll just put this in the same frame right here. And now we can use whatever shape we want. If we wanted something like that, something like this. I actually think this sharp one, it's like more spherical. I think that one looks pretty good usually, maybe with a slight spot at the edge right here. So it kind of smooths off. Let's see, or is it better like that? Yeah, no, it's like this. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. I am just gonna set this to smoother step for now. It's just easier to work with, but know that you can do that. Okay, so we have the displacement. Shrink wrap is also pretty easy. Again, that's another set position. And what we need to do is we want to set the position of this to the position of Suzanne, which you can do with the same thing, the geometry proximity. We already have it set up. You can literally just plug it into the position, and it will try to find the closest faces. But just like before, we only want that mask to be affected. So again, you can use, the scale right here. So plug it into the vector right here. Oh, you want the position plugged into the vector slot, and you want the mask plugged into the scale. Then we can plug that into the position, and it's not working. Oh, you know what? Let's use a mix vector instead. Sorry, I'm doing this all on the fly. I didn't plan any of this beforehand. So we want to blend between the existing and Suzanne's position right here. We plug that into the position of the set position, and then we can actually blend between the two with this factor, and the factor is where we put the mask. Okay, so now it's working. All right, so we have our displacement right here. We have our shrink wrap. Now we need to transfer the normals. So let's make a store named attribute right here. And remember, we want to store this as a vector on the face corner, because remember, we put it on the face corner for the, the other one we made with modifiers. This is the data transfer, and it's on the face corner data. And I know that it's a vector because you can see the normal right here is, it's a vector because of the color. So let's just duplicate that normal with Shift D, and we need to get the normal from Suzanne. So to do that, I believe you can do a sample, sample index, or maybe sample nearest surface is probably the easiest way. So plug in the geometry for sampling that. We want to transfer a vector, so we can plug the normal into here, and then we're going to move the value over to here. This is what we're going to be saving, and it's on the face corner. So I'm just going to call this, target normal or something like that. Target normal. Okay, give this a save. So as far as I know, we don't actually have a way to affect the normals directly in geometry nodes, which is kind of annoying. So we actually have to work with geometry nodes and with the shader nodes, but it's not too hard. Basically, you can just go over to the shader editor and just use an attribute node that has the same name. So I'm just going to hover over this and press Control C. And now that is copied, that, the name, then we can go over to the shading area. Let's just turn this on so we can actually see our materials. Let's bring in an attribute. Let's see, input attribute. Give this a name. And now if we look at it over here, we can actually see the normal data. Let's see if this changes if we have it set to face. Okay, so we want this on the face corner, but this might be giving us something a little different. Let's use a, what's it called? Domain, evaluate on domain, and see if this changes anything. We want this to be a vector. I want this to be on the face corner. Okay, so instead of sample nearest surface, just to have more control, let's use a sample index and sample nearest. Okay, so both of these are going to get the same geometry input from Suzanne. Plug the value in here. So it works pretty much the same way, except it's two separate nodes. Let's see if this gives us any different results. It actually looks the same, so whatever. I think it's fine. Yeah, we need to blend between this normal and the existing normal. So we actually need to bring our mask over also. So let's just set this over here. I'll just name this mask, and it will be maybe just on the point domain and as a float, because it's just black and white. So we need to plug this in over here, like there. So now we can reference this in the shader editor because we saved it as an attribute over here. Okay, so let's duplicate this, change this to mask, take a look at it. Okay, so now we have it right here. Okay, so we can bring in the normal of the object, which I think is under geometry. We have normal, right? Okay, so we need to blend between this and the target normal, and that we can use a mix right here. We can use a mix vector because we're mixing the two vectors. So we're mixing between the normal and the target normal. Hopefully this works. And then we can plug this just directly into the normal, see what that looks like. So it's starting to look a little different, but it's not blending exactly the way we want because it's blending the whole thing, and that's where the mask comes in. We plug this in right here, and now it is actually blending right here, kind of the way that you would expect with the other one. And it should work too if you scale it down, I believe. Let's see if we apply the scale. So when you apply the scale, it will change slightly because of the values in the geometry nodes, but you can actually make all of that editable in an external way. So again, this is what we're doing over here. We have the mask, we have the current normal, and we have the target normal. And let me just show the geometry nodes. So we have the distance mask. This is the target normal. This is displacing, this is shrink wrapping, and then this is just storing attributes to use in the shader editor. So if you want everything to be editable over here, you can just take your group input like this, start plugging stuff in. So we have the object. Now you can also have another way to do this. You can have the distance right here. So you can just type in input, group input, there you go, from mask. So this is the distance. And then If you really want to, you can also affect how much it's being displaced. So you could also have, like, I think I named it inflate in the other one, so we could do that also. Press N to open up the side panel, and then you can rename everything. So this is the distance. This I'll name this inflate. All right, so now if you really wanted to, if you have two objects, you can decide like, oh, I want it to, you know, shrink wrap over to this one. All you have to do is select one thing. And now it should work. It should connect to this, which is pretty cool. You can even do it so it's like kind of compounding, like things shrink wrapping on top of, you know, something that's already shrink wrapping. If you bring another one up here, make this one target the first ball, and now it's acting a little closer to something like meta balls, except, you know, we still just have a bunch of separate objects, which is kind of cool. And again, remember I said you can, you know, change the distance of all this stuff. You can change the fall off if you want it to be a little better, a little smoother. There's actually one issue I didn't talk about, and it happens when you actually rotate this object. You can see if I start to rotate it, the connecting point, the normal doesn't really line up. So you actually just have to do one thing in geometry nodes. I also turned that into an eye. We can just get an object info node right here, get the self object, which means we have access to, you know, the location, rotation, and scale of this object right here. And then we need to just rotate this. So for that, you can bring in a rotate vector right here. Ooh, not that one, not vector rotate. Rotate vector. Okay, and I can just rotate it and you can actually see it changing. All we have to do is just plug in the rotation, and now we should be able to rotate it fine without that error appearing. So yeah, I hope that covered everything. Have a good one. Bye.